would start with an introduction about what's polypharmacy, for those who don't know what's polypharmacy. So polypharmacy has been defined as taking 5 or more medications, and this threshold of number of medications has been associated in the general population with certain negative outcomes, such as, for example, increased risk of adverse reactions, hospitalizations, visit to the emergency department. And so in MS, there hasn't been so much work in terms of knowing more about polypharmacy and its impact, and most studies that have been done in MS have been fairly small or not population-based, or focus on other issues regarding medication use. So what we wanted to do is to fill that gap and to see mostly what's as an initial insight on polypharmacy in MS, to look at the prevalence of polypharmacy in the MS population, and also to see if there were some association between polypharmacy and certain characteristics of our population. So what we did was we accessed administrative data and pharmacy data from British Columbia, the province of British Columbia in Canada, and we identified MS cases by using an algorithm to detect MS cases in administrative data. And we recorded all the prescription these individuals with MS filled during the year 2017. So we chose 1 year to detect polypharmacy. And what we wanted to do is to detect the prevalence of polypharmacy, and we define polypharmacy in our study as taking 5 medications concurrently and for at least 30 consecutive days or more. And every individual that fulfilled that criteria was regarded as being exposed to polypharmacy. And we also wanted to see if there was any association between polypharmacy and age, sex, socioeconomic status, and comorbidity burden. And also to characterize the polypharmacy in terms of its duration, the most common medications contributing to the polypharmacy, and some co-prescription of these different medications. So what we found was that roughly the population that we assessed was a population of 14,000 individuals with MS from British Columbia, and during the year 2017, of these 14,000, almost 4,000 fulfill our criteria for polypharmacy, and that's roughly a prevalence of 28%, so one out of every 4 MS individuals were exposed to polypharmacy in a 1-year period. And we also found that there were some association between polypharmacy and female sex, and increasing age, and also lower socioeconomic status and increased comorbidity burden that we measure using a score that it's called Charlson Comorbidity Index. And in terms of the polypharmacy or the medications contributing to the polypharmacy, the medications that were that contributed the most to polypharmacy were mostly antidepressants, antiepileptics, and medications for peptic ulcer. So those 3 medications contributed each one more than 40%, and in the case of antidepressants, around 65% of the individuals that were exposed to polypharmacy receive those medications. And we also explore some co-prescriptions between the different medications. In the medications that were more commonly co-prescribed were the antidepressant, antiepileptics, as well as the medication for peptic ulcer. But we also found that there was a lot of co-prescription of CNS active medications. So for example, antiepileptics with anxiolytics or sedative medications or antipsychotics. And we also found a lot of co-prescription of opioids with other CNS depressants, including muscle relaxants, but as well sedatives, anxiolytics. And we believe that's probably something worth exploring in the future in terms of outcomes, because there are some negative associations in the general population with regards to those associations. And we finally, we also found that the polypharmacy in most of those exposed to polypharmacy was a chronic or long-term polypharmacy, because most of the individuals were exposed for longer than 6 months. So that's pretty much what our study was about. So it was a preliminary or first insight in polypharmacy in a population-based study or analysis.